He built dreams with me in a rented room, but then married a millionaire's daughter and pretended we never existed. And to the rest of the world, it was just a showbox apartment in a sketchy neighborhood with flickering streetlights and sirens at midnight. But for me, it was our kingdom. The place where hope lived, not because of what it had, but because of who I was sharing it with. The carpet was torn. The plumbing hissed like a snake. Our upstairs neighbor played loud video games at 2 a.m., and the building reeked of stale beer and laundry detergent. But every morning when I opened my eyes and saw him sleeping beside me, curled toward me like I was his anchor, I felt rich. That room held everything we had: a mattress on the floor, a thrifted desk where he worked on his startup, 2 mugs, one chipped, and a whiteboard we bolted to the wall where we wrote our 10-year plan. Launch, save $10K, get out of East Belmont, visit New York, buy a home. Together. We wrote it with a blue marker that eventually dried out. But not before we underlined together 3 times. His name was Armand, and mine was stitched into every version of his future. We met during our senior year at university. I was majoring in psych, waitressing to pay tuition. He was buried in code, building prototypes between lectures and odd jobs. He was charismatic, not in the loud, popular kind of way, but in the kind that made you look at him twice. There was something about the way he talked about life, like it was a project he could still design from scratch. He had that bold kind of hope that most people grow out of, but I hadn't. So I saw it in him, recognized it, fed it. He used to leave voice notes for me when I worked double shifts. I know today is rough, but one day, people will work for you. You're not built for this grind. You're built for more. That's how he made me feel, like I wasn't just worth loving, I was worth building a life for. When we graduated, jobs didn't come easy. He turned down safe offers to build his startup, and I picked up a second gig as a barista. It wasn't glamorous. We were always tired, always calculating every dollar, but we shared everything. He never made me feel like a burden. He'd kiss my forehead and say, "I don't care how long it takes. I just care that we're in this together." He'd sit on the floor with his laptop propped up on a cardboard box, pitching his app to faceless investors who ghosted him the next day. I'd sit behind him, editing his pitch decks, massaging his shoulders during his all-nighters, whispering, "We'll make it." One night, during a blackout, we lit candles and sat with our backs against the wall. The whole neighborhood was dark, and the silence made the city feel unreal. I remember him brushing hair out of my face and saying, "I know it's not much right now, but one day, you'll wake up in a real house with white sheets and sunlight pouring in, and you'll think, 'I earned this.' And you'll be right, because none of it happens without you." I cried that night, not because I was sad, but because I believed him. I believed in the man who held my hand in the dark and painted futures I could feel. There was never a proposal. No ring. Just soft promises whispered into my hair in the middle of the night, and a shared Google Doc titled, "Our Future." That was our love language, hope. I wore the same winter coat for 2 years. He reused ramen seasoning to make soup taste different. We were poor, but we made it work. Because the plan was temporary. Because we were building something. When he finally got his first investor meeting, a real one, I spent all night helping him practice. I printed his pitch deck at my college library, bought him a new shirt from my tip money, and packed him lunch in a brown paper bag with a sticky note that said, "Show them what I already see." He came home that night glowing. The deal hadn't closed yet, but he said it was the beginning. And I believed that too. We celebrated with frozen pizza and Netflix on a cracked laptop screen. I remember lying with my head on his chest, listening to the way his heartbeat sped up when he talked about the future. That's what we did best, dream. Even when life gave us every reason not to. There were moments of doubt, of course. Days when he snapped at me for being too realistic. Days when I caught him staring at luxury apartments online, zoning out during dinner. But I told myself it was just stress. That everyone loses focus sometimes. What I didn't realize was, he wasn't drifting. He was detaching. He started staying out later, blamed work, stopped adding things to our whiteboard. Deleted our shared budget sheet. It's just easier to track it myself, he said. He changed his passwords, changed his tone, and slowly, he stopped saying, we. He'd still sleep beside me, still kiss my cheek, but the warmth was rehearsed, mechanical, like a man playing a part he had already mentally quit. But I didn't want to see it, because when you've built your entire world around someone, accepting that they've outgrown you feels like setting fire to your own home. So I kept believing, kept showing up, kept feeding a future that was already starving. Because no one ever tells you how it feels to be left emotionally before you're left physically. I held on. For him. For us. For the version of the story where we made it. But what I didn't know was that the real story was about to begin. The room we built dreams in was about to become the graveyard of everything I once believed in. I should have known something was wrong the moment he told me to dress up. We hadn't gone out in months. Work, money, stress, those were always the excuses. But that morning, he leaned against the doorframe, sipping his coffee, and said with that familiar half smile, "Wear that black dress tonight. I'm taking you somewhere special." The black dress. The one I bought on clearance for our first anniversary dinner. I hadn't worn it in over a year. It hung in our closet like a memory we didn't touch anymore. I wanted to ask why. Why now? But I didn't. Because part of me was starving for the old us. For any piece of that warmth we used to share. I thought, maybe this was a turning point. Maybe the tension would break, and we'd finally talk. Reconnect. Maybe he remembered we were a we. I spent an hour getting ready. Curled my hair the way he liked. Wore the perfume he bought me 2 birthdays ago. I even put on the earrings he once said made me look like the girl he'd build a kingdom for. He picked me up right on time. He looked sharp, tailored blazer, fresh haircut. Not the usual tired Armand in worn sneakers and stress lines. He looked like a man who was doing well. Like someone who had started living in a version of the future I hadn't been invited to. But I still smiled. Still reached for his hand in the car, even though his fingers didn't wrap around mine the way they used to. He took me to a rooftop restaurant downtown, the kind of place with gold menus and waiters who judged your shoes. I looked around, confused. "Armand, we can't afford this," I whispered. He smiled, brushing it off. "I got a deal. One of my investors owns the place. It's covered. Relax." So I relaxed. Or tried to. I let the music soak in, let the city lights blur in my wine glass. For a moment, I let myself imagine this was just a celebration. That he was still my Armand. That maybe, just maybe, the worst had passed. And then, his phone lit up. He grabbed it fast, too fast, and tilted the screen away from me. I didn't say anything. I'd stopped asking questions a long time ago. But this time, he put the phone down slowly. Exhaled. Looked at me with eyes I didn't recognize. "I wanted to talk to you," he said, his voice low. My heart dropped. "About what?" "Us." I went still. He didn't hold my hand. Didn't touch me. He just stared at his plate like it held the answer. "There's no easy way to say this," he continued. "I met someone." Silence. For a moment, I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared at him, waiting for the punchline. Waiting for him to laugh, to say he was joking, to rewind time. "You." "What?" I finally managed. "Her name's Maya," he said. "She's from a different world. Her father's backing the next round of funding. The company's going public next year. And what?" I cut him off. My voice cracked. "You fell in love with a paycheck?" He winced. But he didn't deny it. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Armand?" "Huh? You built everything with me. You built you with me. Now you're trading up because she's got money and connections?" He still didn't look at me. That said more than words ever could. "I didn't plan this," he murmured. "It just happened. And I can't ignore what's best for my future. For the company. You know how hard I've worked." That was the dagger. Because I knew exactly how hard he'd worked. I was there for every failure, every sleepless night, every, I can't do this without you. And now I was hearing that he could. Worse, that he already was. Are you leaving me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He finally looked at me. I'm getting married, he said quietly. To Maya. Her father wants it to happen soon. It's strategic. For the business. He said it like it was a boardroom decision. Like marrying someone else was just another item on a checklist. I stood up. Couldn't sit anymore. My chest was on fire. So what does that make me? I asked. Collateral damage? A test version of your life? He flinched, but again, no denial. No apology. Just silence. We started in that tiny room, I said, my voice shaking. We didn't have anything, but we had us. You swore to me, Armand. You made me believe I was your reason. Your person. You were, he said softly. But things change. No people change. Cowards change. I left that night without finishing my wine. I didn't cry in front of him. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. I walked past the maitre d', down the gold-trimmed stairs, out into the cold, fake-lit city that suddenly felt unfamiliar, unwelcoming. And I walked home, in heels, in that damn black dress, with mascara drying on my cheeks and my stomach twisting like I'd been stabbed. When I reached our apartment, I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and looked around the place we used to call home. I saw the mattress we slept on, the whiteboard still hanging on the wall, our plans still written in blue ink. I stood there for a long time, and then I walked over and erased every word. Because that version of me, the girl who believed in Armand, died the moment he said strategic. He may have chosen money over memory, but what he didn't know was, I remember everything. And now, I would become unforgettable. The first thing I did when I got home that night was take off the black dress. I didn't fold it, didn't hang it. I yanked it off and threw it into the trash like it was toxic. Because it was. It smelled like false promises and lipstick smiles, like a woman who dressed up for her own funeral and didn't know it until dessert. Then I sat on the floor, not the mattress, not the couch. Just the cold wooden floor of that same apartment where we once dreamed about a future, and I stared at nothing. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just froze. My body wouldn't move, but my mind ran in circles, replaying every moment, the dinners, the voice notes, the all-nighters, the whiteboard. All the things I did to keep him afloat when the world said he'd drown. And in return, he traded me for convenience, for capital, for the daughter of a man who could shortcut his way into success. He didn't just leave me. He erased me. And it wasn't even personal. That's what stung the most. I was just the stepping stone he scrubbed clean before hosting the real investors. A placeholder. A practice run. That night, I slept on the floor. Not because I had to, but because the bed felt like a lie. I didn't want softness. I wanted truth. And the truth was cold. Hard. Lonely. The next morning, I woke up early. My face was swollen. My eyes dry. I looked like a ghost. But I made coffee. Then I picked up my phone and opened his social media, the one he once begged me to help him manage. And there it was. Engaged to Maya Kana, grateful for new beginnings. He posted it, just like that. Less than 24 hours after he told me. Like I'd never existed, like the years we shared were just a prequel that didn't test well with the audience. The comments were full of congratulations. Investors, tech bros, influencers. Everyone gushing over how inspiring it was to see a self-made man find his match. Match? She wasn't his match. She was his upgrade. And he was a coward dressed in ambition. I stared at the screen, shaking. My thumb hovered over the comments section. I could have exposed him. Could have dropped receipts, photos, voice notes, screenshots. I had all of it, but I didn't. Because something in me whispered, wait. Don't scream into the void. Don't give him the drama he can dismiss as emotional baggage. Wait, watch, plan. So I logged out, deleted the app, and then I made a list. I didn't know it yet, but that list would become my blueprint. It started with move out, get a new job, erase his name from my life, build something that makes him irrelevant. That last one, that was the seed of my revenge. I sold the furniture, all of it. The mattress, the desk, the broken coffee table. I wanted no trace of him in my new chapter. I moved into a tiny studio across town, smaller than our old place. But this time it was mine. I worked 2 jobs for the first 3 months. Barista by day, copywriter for a tech blog by night. I slept 4 hours a night, but I was too angry to be tired. Anger is fuel when you know how to burn it slow. And I did. I enrolled in online courses, learned digital marketing, studied brand psychology, picked up skills I once put off to support his dreams. And little by little, I started building something. A blog, a platform, a brand centered around women rebuilding after betrayal. I called it Ashes and Alchemy because I wasn't just healing, I was transforming. Within 6 months, I had 30,000 followers. Brands were reaching out. I was making more from affiliate income than from my jobs combined. Women were messaging me from every corner of the country, sharing stories, thanking me, crying with me. I was turning pain into power. And he? He was parading around as the visionary CEO of a company I helped shape in silence, taking credit for everything we built with broken furniture and shared pizza. But I still didn't touch him. Not yet. Because true revenge isn't loud. It's precise, strategic. I learned that from him. And one day, life gave me my window. I got a DM on my business page. Hey, love what you're building. We're looking to run a campaign around female-led startups and would love to feature you in a Forbes digital panel. Interested? I blinked. It was a real invite, from a real publication, with a real PR agency attached. And the moment I clicked on the list of panelists, my breath hitched. Arman Kapoor, CEO of Intellex. And me, Anya Dawes, founder of Ashes and Alchemy. Side by side, on the same virtual stage. The irony? They picked us as 2 rising visionaries reshaping digital culture. They didn't know our history, but I did, and I said yes. Because some stories deserve to be told face to face. Not with tears. Not with screams. But with success. And when he'd see me, not as the girl in a rented room, but as the woman who rose from the wreckage he left, he'd realize. He didn't bury me. He planted me. And I bloomed into something he'll never afford again. I remember the moment his name appeared on the panel's Zoom screen. Arman Kapoor. He looked exactly like he did a year ago, crisp suit, hair too perfect, the smug little nod that screamed confidence. But I knew better now. That wasn't confidence. That was someone who'd never been told no long enough to think he was untouchable. I waited patiently for my turn. The panel opened with introductions. Arman went first, of course. I founded Intellex to revolutionize behavioral data using neural algorithms. We've raised over $18 million in funding so far and recently partnered with Media Ventures on predictive analytics. I smiled softly. He sounded exactly the same, like a pitch deck pretending to be a person. Then it was my turn. I'm Anya Dawes, I said, steady and clear. I created Ashes and Alchemy, a women-led recovery brand focused on turning emotional destruction into personal evolution. We help women rebuild, rebrand, and rise from betrayal, professionally and personally. His eyes flicked up. He hadn't known. He hadn't recognized the name before. He hadn't put it together. But he did now. I watched the realization hit him like ice water. She's not gone. She's here. She made it. The moderator asked us both about building brands out of adversity. I answered first. Sometimes, the worst betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the person who promised you forever. But what I learned is, Rock bottom isn't the end. It's the truth. And when you build from truth, no one can shake it. Armand stayed silent, just nodded, tight-lipped. But the chat window on the panel began buzzing with live comments. Ashes and alchemy is so real. This woman is fire. Why does it feel like there's history here? I smiled again. Small. Controlled. Because this wasn't the loud part. The loud part came after. 2 weeks after the panel, I got a call from a journalist with Business Daily. She'd seen my platform, read the traction, watched the panel. She was curious. "How did you get started?" she asked. I paused. And then I told her. Not everything, but enough. Enough to let people know that the girl who helped build a tech empire was quietly written out of its origin story. Enough to show what happens when you erase someone who gave you their best years. The article went viral. Not just because of the story, but because I never named him. People knew. They connected the dots themselves. And that was even better. More damning. Because the whisper spread faster than any quote ever could. Intellix's golden boy had a shadow. And she was starting to glow. The revenge wasn't just personal now. It became poetic. Every time his company posted a milestone, someone brought up ashes and alchemy in the comments. Every new press feature he landed, someone tagged me. Funny how real builders don't need to marry into success. It didn't matter that I didn't say a word. The world started saying it for me. But I wasn't done. I'd been watching Intellix's moves carefully, quietly, strategically. And I knew something others didn't. Armin's product had a flaw. A major one. One I'd flagged back when we worked on it together. One he'd brushed off. So I started consulting. Privately, at first. Then through Ashes and Alchemy, I launched a mini agency, Women in Tech, helping other women scale with integrity and emotional intelligence. And one of my first big clients? One of Intellix's top competitors. I didn't even have to reach out. They came to me. Turns out, the industry had been watching. And when you build something from honesty, when you become unignorable, opportunities knock on your door. We redesigned an entire behavioral UX flow that directly counted Intellix's approach. It was cleaner, safer, and unlike Armin's model, it didn't manipulate users into compulsive engagement. The results? Conversion doubled. Press coverage exploded. Investors shifted interest. Armin's board got nervous. And when boards get nervous, they dig. It didn't take long for someone to leak that a silent contributor, me, was part of Intellix's foundational strategy. A journalist ran the story. Not scandalous. Just facts. But it was enough. Enough to stain the myth of the self-made visionary. Enough to plant doubt. And doubt is poison in business. I heard from him one last time. A message. "Anya, I didn't know you were going to do all this. You could have just talked to me. We could have found closure. What's the point of dragging it out?" I stared at the screen. And then I replied. "This is closure, Armand. You gave me silence. I gave you a legacy." I never heard from him again. But I didn't need to. Because the final victory wasn't his company's decline. It was my own rise. It was the emails I got from women who said my blog stopped them from going back to men who broke them. It was the new apartment I paid for in cash. It was the fact that I didn't have to raise my voice, because my values spoke louder than my rage ever could. He built his empire on borrowed power. I built mine on broken pieces and turned them into diamonds. So if you ask me today whether I ever think of him, I do. Not with pain. Not with love. With gratitude. Because when he left me for someone richer, he thought he was upgrading. But he just handed me the fire I needed to become something he could never afford again. It had been 2 years. 2 years since that dinner. 2 years since that ring. 2 years since the man I once built a life around traded me for the illusion of success. In those 2 years, I hadn't looked back, not once. Because when you heal for real, not for show, not for revenge, but deep cellular healing, You stop checking who's watching. You just live. My business had grown. Ashes and Alchemy became more than a brand. It became a movement. We launched a podcast, then a book, then workshops in 6 major cities. Women flew in from across the country to sit in rooms with others like them, women who had been left, lied to, laughed at, and told to move on like heartbreak was a paper cut. I saw them transform. And quietly, I transformed too. I didn't cry about Armand anymore. I didn't feel the ache in my chest when I passed places we used to go. I could hear his name in a room and not flinch. And then, one night, as if summoned by irony itself, the past came knocking. Oh, it was a gala. Not for me, for a client. A startup founder we helped rebrand after her co-founders tried to force her out. She'd made a comeback so wild it deserved a movie. She invited me as her guest of honor. Please, Anya. Just be there. You saved me. I said yes. Not because I wanted to go, but because women like her were why I built what I built. The venue was high-end. The kind where waiters wear gloves and nobody finishes their champagne. I walked in wearing a black gown. But not the one from 2 years ago. This one was tailored. Sharp. A symbol. And as I crossed the ballroom, sipping my drink, smiling politely, a voice I hadn't heard in years cut through the air behind me. Anya? I turned. And there he was. Armand Kapoor. But not the one I remembered. His eyes were hollow. Shoulders slouched. No designer smile. Just fatigue masked with forced charm. For a second, the air shifted. Not in panic, in realization. Oh, you're not a god anymore. He stepped closer. Unsure. Testing the water. Wow, you look incredible. It's been forever. I nodded. 2 years. I heard about Ashes and Alchemy. You've really built something. I didn't reply. He looked down, then back up. Fumbled. Listen, I know I'm probably the last person you want to talk to, but things didn't turn out the way I expected. I tilted my head, curious. He continued. The company's. It's struggling. The board replaced me as CEO last quarter. Maya and I, we separated. Turns out money doesn't fix everything. He laughed. Weakly. And seeing you, thriving, I guess I wanted to say I'm sorry. The old me would have melted. Would have seen the boy I once loved behind the man I barely recognized. But the new me? She saw right through it. Because what he wanted wasn't forgiveness. He wanted relief from guilt. He wanted the girl he buried to stand there and say, "It's okay. You didn't ruin me." But I didn't owe him that. So I smiled, kind, but unshaken. I'm not angry, Armand. I just don't live in that story anymore. He blinked as if expecting more. That's it? He asked. I nodded. That's everything. Then I turned, walked away, and never looked back. Because closure doesn't come when they apologize. It comes when you realize you no longer need it. Today, when people ask me what happened between us, I don't tell them about the betrayal. I don't tell them about the lies. I tell them the truth. He took me to our favorite place for our anniversary. But only to tell me he's marrying someone else. That's where the story starts. But it ends like this. And I built a life so rich, so real, so whole. That now, the only thing he'll ever own is regret.